Welcome everybody, and thank you so much for being here. The Personalised Health Summit 2015. Super excited to have a conversation with Charan Surdhar today. It's going to be a crazy conversation about epigenetics, personalised health, stress, our brain, consciousness, the whole works. Can't wait to get into it. But firstly, I just want to say a huge thank you to you for investing the time into your health, to be here to listen to 30 experts from all over the world, bringing great conversations so that you can find out what's right for you to be happy and healthy. A huge thank you to the Ultimate Human Foundation, working towards the elimination of chronic pain and disease from the planet, and to PH360, who's really bringing in the tangible application of all these epigenetic insights that we're going to talk about today with Charan into a way that you can actually find out really specifically the things that are really good for you in terms of the foods to eat, exercise to do, environments to be in, the people to hang out with, the way their mind works, your natural talents, and so much more. So please check out onlinehealthsummit.com/PH360 for more information there. And without any further ado, I'm going to jump into having a fantastic conversation today. Charan's a geneticist by academic training and work history turned epigeneticist from her innermost desire to reveal the truth about our human potential. She's got a Bachelor of Science degree in microbiology and a Master's in human genetics. She's worked in the fields of genetics for 13 years, identifying genetic mutations for a whole host of genetic diseases, and contributed to scientific papers as well as textbooks. Today, she works specifically with genetic diseases, assisting to release the energy in the form of emotions, beliefs, and perceptions that get in the way of our natural flow of our body to express the power in our DNA. Charan leads the paradigm shift in the revolutionary new field of epigenetics. It's been featured on the Hidden Science TV show, also for the upcoming movie Punk Science. She's also an author of a book which you can find at hababthehoop.com. She has a huge passion to create animated videos to explain in a simple way concepts such as epigenetics, which you can find on YouTube channel, charansurdhar.com. Charan, thank you so much for being here today. And I really absolutely love the work you're doing in epigenetics. And it's a pleasure to have you on this conversation today to share all your amazing insights about personalized health. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Matt. It's just great. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. And Charan, I'd love to jump in and start by finding a little bit more about you. I know the bio's given us a bit of a history there, but would you better walk us through how you ended up doing what you're doing today, and maybe the things that you've learned in your journey and your experience that you're able to now share with so many people around the world?
I have been on quite an interesting journey, and I am quite grateful for the steps that showed up, because it's that kind of journey where, you know, you just follow your heart and then the next step shows up. So as you said, I was a geneticist by training for 13 years. I worked in the Children's Hospital. And the interesting thing was, during that period, I was very much interested in learning about the mind-body connection. And so while I was working in the hospital, I was still going through sort of different kinds of things and learning about different things, where I was learning about how the mind and the body and the spirit connect with the body and the DNA. And it was a calling really to look for something, because it felt like something was missing. It didn't feel complete. It felt like the circle was still open and not complete. So as I was doing that, it became apparent that you know, our mind and body and spirit are connected to the way that our biology shows up. And so that then led me into the work that I'm doing now, which is epigenetics. And so going from working with blood samples and DNA and looking at the DNA mutations and all that, I now am working with people and working with on a different level, different perspective on that. So.
That's beautiful, Charan. Thank you so much for sharing that. And could you just spend maybe just another couple of minutes for those that are listening in now? We've got a whole range of people from the audience that are listening live and those that will be watching the replay here. Can you tell us just a little bit more about genetics for starters? I know you spent quite a number of years in that field. You know, just a very basic overview for those that aren't, you know, quite aware of these fields yet. You know, what is genetics, or how do we talk about our genes and what do they do for us, and how does that work? And then maybe how that transition to the concepts of epigenetics and how you know, the understandings that we're finding out now in that field.
Yeah, I'd love to. So genetics is about, you know, when I was working there, it was looking at the mutations. So what is a mutation? It's basically that you've got a sequence of you know, if you think about it, Christmas lights, say, I love making things simple. So let's say there's a sequence of Christmas lights, and that's your DNA. And you know, it's some light up, some don't light up, and they kind of have that analogy there. So if you imagine that, it's saying that that is what's controlling your biology. So that's genetics. So random. It's that you can't do anything about it. That light's going to blink, and then that's going to create a certain protein, and you're going to be showing up with, you know, whatever condition or physical symptom. Now, epigenetics, on the other hand, is different, because it's saying that you actually are not a victim to the way that randomness shows up. That actually, if you had, say, a switch on the end of those Christmas lights, which could control the way those lights show up, you can then have control of what shows up in your biology. So it's a very simple example to really say that is how it was initially thought to be, that we don't have any control, and that the lights, the way they shine randomly, it just impacts us, and we can't do anything about it. And there's a lot of, you know, still beliefs around that is the case. But moving into epigenetics now, we know that if we can there's different kinds of switches that actually control the way those Christmas lights show up. And so as a result, we then are not a victim to what shows up.
That's beautiful, Charan, and I really, really love how you make things so simple for us to understand. It's so great, and I'm sure everybody's going to really enjoy this conversation in the complex world of science and medicine and epigenetics, and the very specifics we can go into is actually as simple as saying that we just have a whole heap of Christmas lights in our body, and now we understand the switches that can actually control the way they turn on and off. It's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that with us. I'd love just to visit these concepts in a little bit more depth as well, and we talk about the different areas of epigenetics, and we're going to get into that a little bit more in the conversation. One of the things that I'm particularly interested in is the link between, you know, maybe our stress and our genetics, or our epigenetics, and how this influences maybe even our brain, how our brain works. And we've talked a lot about consciousness. We're starting to bring in, you know, the conversation about the mind. Could you help us navigate, in your beautiful words, how we can start to understand a bit more about stress, about our brain, and about consciousness, and how that all fits into our life, and you know, and where we can go from here?
Yeah, so there's quite a few questions there, and so let's go with the first, and that is that how stress influences our body and the brain, and then the other bit is about how consciousness. So I'll bring in after that.
Beautiful, thank you.
So the first thing is that when we experience stress, we could look at it, and we can take the analogy that we have of those Christmas lights and having those switches there, that if there is a switch that says stress and we click that, the Christmas lights show up in a different way. And what that results in is that there's a different kind of physiology that shows up in the body. And the reason that is the case is because we have a gland in the brain called the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is the one that actually is the gland that picks up the information from the environment to say, hey, I'm in trouble, or hey, it's okay, you're safe. And so as soon as the body picks up on those signals, it is then relayed to the pituitary and the adrenal glands. So if you are safe, then your body will not produce stress hormones from the adrenals, which is cortisol and adrenaline. But if you are in a dangerous situation, then you, like say you see a lion and you need to run. Of course you need to run. So you need the adrenaline, you need the cortisol, because that results in the physiology of allowing for the blood to go into your arms and your legs so you can run. But the thing is that in our daily life, stress has become such a thing that it's normal. the threshold for that has become normal. And we don't even recognize that it's there. So what then results, it happens in the body, is that switch is turned on. And so different genes come on and off, and that results in the body producing certain proteins that result in physical symptoms, things showing up in the body. So again, we're not a victim to that. If we know that there is a switch there that controls that, we have the ability to then go and look at that. Now, with regards to the opposite, if we are feeling safe, then we have that ability to produce the proteins that are respectively producing, you know, that you feel good, and your organs are getting all the blood they need, and everything is functioning well. But now let's go to, that's that bit about the brain and how that works. Now let's go to consciousness. Now there's also, see, there's different aspects to that. So consciousness itself is that we are all connected, and there is that consciousness exists in all of us. And it's the energy that exists in all of us. There's a lot of studies done that show that the consciousness comes through from the non-physical into the physical through the living matrix, which is the connective tissue in the body. And so when we are experiencing life in our day-to-day basis, a lot of people will say, well, let's say empaths, and you feel very empathic and you're picking up stuff. So there is that consciousness of that as well, that you're picking up all that stuff. It comes through our body and shows up in our physiology. But there's also the other aspect, which is a very much a part of my work, and that is that when we're looking at consciousness, it also comes in with the ancestral stuff that we have inherited, generational things that we've inherited, energies really that have been inherited. And so it's that whole aspect of us, that we're not just that physical body. We are this very integrated system within consciousness and consciousness itself that shows up in a whole variety of ways. So, for example, it's the work that I do, a lot of people show up with inherited energies that are existing in them, and they are then influencing, they're acting as switches for those Christmas lights. So the work that I do is go in and look for those and remove them. And as a result, when you release those, you're actually not just releasing it, and this is just, this just gives me goosebumps every time. The fact is that when you release it, you're not just releasing it from the individual, you're actually releasing it from however many generations it came back from, and from their children and their sisters and their brothers. And then if, say, it went back 18 generations, you actually have a whole bunch of descendants from that one person on the planet. And so as a result of doing that, you're actually releasing it from the planet. And that is miraculous. So I had one client just say to me, said, if that's the case, can I get commission from all the people that I'm releasing this off the planet from?
Fantastic.
But, yeah, but that's where consciousness and the other bit comes in. Yeah.
That's beautiful, Charan, and thank you for walking us through that. It really helps us understand a lot more about some things that can seem really out there and really crazy, and this whole talk about consciousness is sometimes really hard to comprehend. And it's really, I just really appreciate that about how you can walk us through so simply about our current physiology, the way our brain works, the way our little switches work with our Christmas lights, and then how this energy or the way that we exist in our mind can actually influence all of that. And it's really empowering actually to understand that we can actually control and influence that, and by some of the choices we make, influence the way that energy flows in our body. I know that often people are a little bit scared about the word energy. It seems a bit out there and a bit woo-woo. But as you're aware, and as we look at from a scientific point of view, energy in the body is very measurable. It's very objective. It's data. We can quantify it and we can talk about it. And it's amazing to be able to see that talking about this conscious conversation can actually influence and affect physical energy that you can measure in the body and objectively change states. And as you share there, we now know by some of the science with epigenetics that it crosses multiple generations. And that's now scientific fact. And the fact that you can actually influence the way that these energies influence the Christmas lights, as you talk about with epigenetics, that you can do that with people, and people have the power to be able to change that, not just for themselves, but for future generations, or even going back into the past, is really powerful, and it's a great conversation. So thanks for bringing that to our attention. And I'd love to find out a little bit more about this concept of epigenetics. We haven't gone into depth at all this summit about epigenetics. We've talked about it a lot, but we don't have a solid understanding just yet about it. And as you know, I like to talk about it, so I'm going to try and be very quiet on this call, otherwise you'll get me rambling. But I'd love for you to share a little bit about epigenetics with us and what's the tangible nature of it. So if we now understand that there's these switches that can happen around our Christmas lights, what are these switches? What sort of things influence the way our Christmas lights are showing up?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can come to answer that question from many angles, but let's take it from this. So there's as I said, consciousness comes through, and it's also the collective, it's the ancestral. It's a mix of everything. And so when we are conceived, the energies of both mom and dad come together. It's not just the DNA, but the energy that comes together, the switches that they have for their DNA and their genes come together in the embryo that's conceived. And so that then influences the individual, but that's on that level, that you can have that come in and you have all that come through. And it's not just that, you also have emotions that come through that say, emotions that generations back, someone went through famine or, drought or anything like that, war, the World War II, for example, even. So anything like that, there is a lot of trauma around that time, and whatever that those people experienced at that time gets passed on, and that becomes a switch. And that is very much, it plays a big role in how that shows up for the individual. And we may not even realize it. We go about our daily life and we think, well, it's this, this symptoms just showed up. I wonder what's wrong with me. And we take it on that it's something that we have to look at physically. What are we eating? What are we, and yes, that plays a big role, but there is also this other aspect to it. And if we can become aware of that, that is huge. Now, there's that aspect. And then there's also the other aspect that as we live our lives, we have experience, we experience a whole bunch of stuff. Everyone has things that we experience, they could be anything really, it's life, right? So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can experience. And so that can then become something that gets trapped in the body as a tangible kind of energy that's in the body that has its own frequency, and it results in, say it's trapped around the lungs or a certain organ. The lungs, say for example, have their own frequency. They have a frequency that's optimal to work well, and all that. But if you have an energy that's trapped in there, whether it's ancestral or generational, or whether it's your own after having gone through some trauma, that energy has its own frequency, like I said, and it begins to influence the frequency of your lungs. So then that shows up as maybe asthma or allergies or something like that, or bronchitis. So there's a whole list of those kind of energies that can be passed on, or we can experience in our life, because life is so colorful, and it can bring so much to us. So as a result, all of that can be all the switches that can then influence the way we show up physiologically.
Wow, thank you for going into so much perspective there. There's a lot of different things that we need to be aware of, for starters, that really do influence who we are in our physical makeup and influence our biology and our physiology. And if we talk about scales of epigenetics, there's things, from the cellular level, we talk about specific little epigenetic marks that can change the way a gene is expressed, all the way through to things from outside of Earth in space that can influence the way that our magnetic fields work, and how they can be switches as well for our fields, for our Christmas lights. Do you have any insights on those sort of things for us as well? And just moving from the really large scale, we had some great conversations this summit already. We talked with Roland McCready from HeartMath. I know you're familiar with the work there, talking about how the Earth's magnetic fields can actually very much transmit biological information, and we can tune in, if you like, to different frequencies that are there, and that can influence our own magnetic frequency in ourselves by being connected with other people from all around the world. And they're doing very amazing scientific studies to get hard data on this, which is, it sounds like a crazy concept, but we're now actually getting measurable data that show and prove this in science. Would you be able to share a little bit about the bigger part of epigenetics with us, and your thoughts and perspective on that?
Yeah, if I could, I want to go just a little bit back and just talk about an example about that inherited energy. Please. And then I'll come back and answer this. There was a study done in Northern Europe, and what they found was they had a book there, that had all the details of all the people that lived there, what they went through, and it's all handwritten, and how they died and what experiences they went through. And what they found was that in the individuals in that village or town, when they went through drought, the people that went through drought and famine, their grandchildren were now showing up with diabetes. And there was a clear link to that. So with regards to what I was talking about earlier, it's so much evidence to show that this can be passed on. And there was recently a study done with mice and cherry blossom, which is, the mice were exposed to the smell of cherry blossom, and every time they smelt it, they were shocked. And so they didn't want to smell it because they knew they were going to get shocked. What they found was that their children, the next generation, actually had a dislike to the smell of cherry blossom without even having been exposed to it. So there's a lot that shows us that, that can get passed down. So going back to the other question, which is, with regards to the bigger picture, and I love the HeartMath work. It's just brilliant. And obviously Roland McCready has more information on that, but from the way that the work that I do, and having the information of HeartMath, is that the most important thing for our epigenetics, for us to have that switch on where we are in a position to produce health and well-being and joy in our bodies, is for our hearts to be in resonance with that of the planet. Because what happens then is that influences the DNA. And that becomes a switch, really. And when it's not in coherence with the heart, with the energy and the frequency of the planet, what happens is that we're out of sync. And, we are beings that are conscious and exist in consciousness, our consciousness, and we have this. That's why we feel so good, you know, going to the beach, going to the woods and walking in the woods. It's just that energy that really allows us to build that coherence, have that coherence between ourselves and the nature and the environment. The work also that I do is very much working with the energy of the heart and looking at the energies that have been passed on to individuals from their parents that are influencing the way that they function. For example, you know, I get people that ask for increased amount of intuition, you know, just to be able to function in a better way. And there's different aspects of energies that can influence that. And by looking at that and clearing all those energies, the individual becomes more coherent with themselves, their cells, and the environment. Because really, we are a microcosm of the macrocosm. And it just all ties up.
Beautiful, Charan. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And this conversation is so fascinating on so many different levels. And I just want to bring it back a little bit to everybody who's listening right now today. And where do we start? So how can we have a healthy brain and a healthy mind? Where do we start, and how do we tangibly, you know, go about that?
Oh, that's a big question. Right. So how do we do that? Well, the main thing is to recognize that, firstly, that we have switches that control the way that we show up, and that we're not at, you know, it's not showing up randomly. It's, you know, we can say that, yes, there is hope, and that we can, if we know what those switches are, to be able to then control that. And the way that we do know what those switches are is by becoming aware of sensations in our body. And what do I mean by that? I mean, there is pain, there are emotions we experience, yes, all of that. But beyond that, if we just take a deep breath and become aware of just the breath, and then we become aware of, say someone said something, rather than reacting, you look inside and you begin to feel, scan your body to see where you're feeling the sensations. And it may be just somewhere here, or maybe in your neck, or your head, or your leg, you know, it could be anywhere. And it could be a tingliness, it could be heat, it could be anything else. So just by becoming aware of it and breathing into that sensation, that allows for that energy to then begin to shift. And it's that energy that's actually telling us there's a switch that's here that's causing a bit of a ripple in your body. So that's one of the biggest, and I find the best tools, which I use and I use with others. It is a huge tool, for sure.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Charan. And just to step into some of the other more very tangible sides of epigenetics, and we often talk about, you know, 6 main areas in the mind, you know, which includes a lot about your beliefs and thoughts and perceptions, which, you know, determine emotions is sort of one of those areas. And we talk about, you know, foods that we eat and how they can influence our gene expression. We talk about exercise and movement. We talk about our environment or our climate. And we talk about, you know, the people that we hang out with in our social interactions. We talk about our natural talents that we have and our careers and what we do with our time, of all being things that are very tangible that can influence the way our Christmas lights are switched on or off. Would you mind just sharing with us a little bit about that at the moment? And for those that are listening in right now, you know, maybe some very tangible things that people can start to be aware of from a personalized aspect. And as we know, I mean, this whole summit is about the fact that everybody's different, everybody's unique. There's not one single one of us that has the same, you know, genes or the same gene expression that exists in the world. And just trying to understand, where do we start from a lot of people sitting at home? Maybe people listening in pain or suffering from disease. Maybe they're, you know, struggling to get sleep at night. Maybe they have insomnia. Maybe they're having tough relationships or a stressful boss at work, or, so many different things that may be existing in our lives right now. Can you just provide a little bit of insight as to where we can start in all these different tangible areas of epigenetics?
There's one of the things that I do look at is the microbiome. And now that is basically, to give a definition to everyone on that, is that we are very much made up of, we exist alongside with organisms like bacteria. And they are, there's a whole variation of, ratios on that, because every one of us, like you said, is different and we all show up differently. But the ratio of organisms to our own human cells is about 9:1. And so that is huge, 90% to 10% human cells. That's incredible to me. So one of the things I do is really to look at how and why that energy gets imbalanced in the body. It's not just taking probiotics. It's because that in the work that I do, yes, you do take probiotics, but there's also that aspect of why is it those organisms are out of balance? Why are you showing up with IBS? Or why, there's different kinds of issues, and there's also mental issues that can show up because they create enzymes that, depression, all sorts of things that can result in the enzymes they produce help us in many different ways. And so this is why different foods obviously help, and obviously pure food, organic and foods that really support our biology, for sure. But the other aspect, again, is really looking at the energy of why you're not able to digest certain foods, why the body is not able to balance out the organisms with our human cells. So there's a whole different, there's a whole, there's a lot into that, really. And like you said, everyone is different. And so it shows up differently for everyone as to why that's the case.
Beautiful, thank you, Charan. And this field of epigenetics is so complex and so ever-changing, but so simple when you can understand not even the fact that everybody's different, but even ourselves are different all the time. And it's really understanding that we're constantly changing, according to our environment, according to the foods we eat, according to how much sleep we get, or the amount of exercise we're doing or not doing, and how much stress we're under in our lives and relationships at work. There's all these amazing interactions all the time, excuse me, with our physical bodies, that if we start to understand and become more aware of these things, we can help understand that we have a choice in all these areas. And that's really one of the really empowering messages that I enjoy sharing with everybody. And for those listening now, is that you have a choice. You get to choose what food you put in your mouth to affect and influence your microbiome and everything else. You get to choose what sort of exercise you do or don't do. You get to choose what sort of climates you hang out in, outdoors or indoors. You get to choose the people you engage with and socialize with. You get to choose what you do for a job and what you do with your time. You get to choose how you think and how you perceive the world. Everything's a choice, and it really is a great time in life and in history for us to be able to understand these concepts, where we can really feel empowered to be able to change the trajectory of where we're going, to be able to change what's currently happening to us. And even as you share, Charan, things that may have been passed on from generations before, we get to change that now, which is just so exciting, from my point of view. And I just wanted to let everybody know, for those that are new to join us on these calls, this is an interactive session. We're going to be taking questions and interacting live with Charan on this call. So please, if you want to join the conversation, you can raise your hand and request to join us, or please pop your questions and your comments down in the chat box. And I know there's been so many comments that have been coming through already from people with great feedback from Charan's beautiful words, and also questions as we're going here. So Charan, I'm just going to jump to a couple of questions that have come through, and maybe just work our way through some of these as we go. There's a really good question about that from Logan, actually, that says, Charan, what if my switch has been turned in the wrong direction for decades and decades? Can it still be turned to the right one that's good for me? And that's a great question, because a lot of us are maybe listening in that are in certain situations. We may have tried lots of different things. We may have tried losing weight, or maybe going to see a therapist, or tried being positive about stuff, and we're still finding ourselves in the same circumstances. Is it possible to switch these switches the other way? And can you help us a little bit with that? And that's a great question. Thank you, Logan.
Definitely, for sure. And that's the whole point of epigenetics, is that yes, we can. And so that's a big message. Yes. Now, how is the question? Is that basically meditation, exercise, the foods we eat, obviously, different things, how we go about our day, how we respond to people in our environment, how we respond to ourselves in different situations. By that, I mean observing what's going on within us as we experience things in our day. And, this goes back to ancient, spiritual concepts of how we can be in our day, how we can actually be present in every situation, in every moment. And by being present, we're actually allowing ourselves to be coherent with the earth and be present. And that's what really, really helps. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Charan. And I'm going to jump to a few more questions here, because there's a lot of great things coming through. There's a really great question here from Sienna that says, Charan, I keep hearing how important our early childhood years are to our psychological and physical development. Are you saying that the moment I am born, I already have all sorts of beliefs and genes ingrained in me, even way before the first 6 years of my life? Fantastic question, Sienna.
Was that before? Could you repeat that? Was that before?
It was, yeah, saying we've heard from a lot of people like Bruce Lipton and many other people that we have a lot of our subconscious programs that are infused in us up to the ages of 6 and 7, and those early childhood years are really important for where we get a lot of these programs and beliefs and other things. The question from Sienna is that does this mean that now we already have beliefs and genetic switches on and off before we even get to that point in time from previous generations? So where we maybe thought it was just the first 6 years, maybe we're actually bringing in all this stuff before we even get to that point in time.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And the work that I do definitely shows that. I've worked with a lot of people, and there's people with chronic fatigue, say, for example, in two situations, the two people are showing up with different things and, different energies that they inherited from their parents. So it's vast. I mean, you can have the same symptoms as someone, but what shows up energetically coming from your parents and way beyond is different. And so, yes.
Awesome, thank you. And just another question that we've got coming in here that kind of tacks on really well to the end of that from Noel, that says, how can we prevent something that we took on from another generation? That's a really great question. We talk a lot about the future of humanity and how we can be successful in helping overcome all this disease and prevalence of pain that exists, and looking towards a place of prevention for future generations. I'd love to hear your thoughts and insights on that, Charan. How can we prevent something that we take on from someone else or from another generation?
One of the things I also want to mention is that we also absorb emotions from our parents. So it's not just the beliefs and perceptions, but also emotions, and that's something I have found as well. But with regards to that question of how we can stop taking that on or stop taking generational stuff on, the thing is to become aware in the moment now. Firstly, to become aware that, yes, we are not, victims to that. We can have the ability to see and feel and be in this moment. And when we are, and we're present to it, like I said, breathing into the body, feeling sensations as you experience life, that's where the switches are. And our body is the greatest and biggest tool ever for us to tune in to what's going on. And so if we can get to that through meditation and learning to bring that into our daily life, moment to moment, that is what will help.
Awesome, thank you, Charan. And another question. This is a fascinating conversation. We've got so many comments and questions coming through about it. Logan says, yes, and how do we ourselves prevent passing things on to future generations. He says, I want to leave the world a better place than I found it. So thank you, Logan, for sharing that. And yeah, Charan, how can we now be very conscious about this ourselves as to what's going to happen with our children, our children's children? What can we do right now to help prevent these sorts of things continuing in future?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question, because really really brilliant, because I work with conscious parents too. And what we do is before conception, you start working on their energies to start releasing all that, and then get to the point of conception where they're, in a better place to where they were. But not only by having released all that, but also the fact that they're now more present in their body. They're more able to actually be themselves, be authentic, be who they're here to be. Their energy is present in that moment of conception, and that is a huge, huge thing, and which allows for those energies to not get, transferred over to the child. I wouldn't say not transferred, but there's a different kind of energy that gets passed on to the child at that point if the parents are in that place.
Beautiful, Charan. And if there's people listening in right now, if there's conscious parents listening to this conversation, if there's other people that need to understand or really interested to find out more about consciousness or about the way that we can start to find out about some switches, and if we're in a personal situation, I know that they're able to engage with you in some way, shape or form. Charan, would you be able to share how we can find out more information about you and the work that you're up to?
Yeah, my website. Do you want to do my website or?
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got a link that we can go and check out, that would be fantastic.
If they can go to my website, www.charansurdhar.com/online health summit, they should be able to go and I've got a great gift for them over there, which is some audios that they can get on all this information as to how all this, putting all this information together. It's quite good information.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Charan, for sharing that. And please go and visit charansurdhar.com/online health summit. That link is in the box there. Please go and check that out. And I'm sure you've all got an insight already about what is in Charan's mind. I just wanted to highlight the excitement that I have about these sorts of conversations, especially with people like Charan, because this is Charan's someone who's been in the game of genetics, in medicine, of science, and now understands there's a bigger conversation out there, understands that there's limitations and that we need to understand more about the mind and about these other concepts that are really important, understands from a scientific point of view what energy is, from something we can physically measure, through to how that influences our emotions, again, that we can now physically measure. So really it's so great to see so many people sort of transitioning from our current paradigm and model in Western science and medicine to realize that there's a lot out there that we don't understand just yet, and starting to delve more into those aspects. So please check out charansurdhar.com/online health summit to find out a lot more about what Charan's up to and the information that she's sharing today. So thank you so much for that, Charan. Charan, I'd love to just jump to another question here that we've got. We've got a whole heap of different questions, but there's a question here from Pablo that says, Charan, how do we clear those ancestral energies? Which is a really great question. I know that this is something that you work with clients on. Is there something you could walk us through or talk us through? Do you have maybe some sort of visualization or some sort of concept or meditation or something that you could actually walk us through as an example of how we can go about something like this?
Well, it really does go back to that sensation in the body. And so I can take people through that just to get a feel of that.
Please, that would be fantastic.
Okay. So if everyone were to just take a few deep breaths. And as you begin to breathe, notice the breath going in and out. And you may feel your chair on your body on the chair or the bed or wherever you're sitting. You may feel your back on the seat. So you're getting a sensation of that. So now if I said to you, think of something that feels really good. Like, for example, the waves of the ocean, and you can really hear the waves. And then get a feeling of what sensations does your body create as a result of thinking about the waves of the ocean. So you'll get a feel of that. And now, if I was to bring in another example of, say, for example, 9/11, and you can see the planes going into the buildings, you will get a completely different sensation in the body. So have a feel of that. So now when you feel that, think of, in your own life, a situation that's really troubling you. It may be financial, it may be a relationship issue, whatever it is. Feel that sensation in the body as you're breathing. And you'll notice it may be a tingling, it may be some heat. And just breathe into it. Because what it is really, it's like a lake. If you have a still lake, that's consciousness. And when you have a ripple in that lake, that's the sensation that you're feeling. So what you do when you're feeling the sensations and being aware of the sensations is that you're actually allowing for those ripples to settle. And those ripples could be anything. And as a result, you're allowing yourself to just, your whole energy to come into coherence with the planet, to come, the cells, your DNA, just to become into coherence with everything. So that's a great, great, great tool that you could take into your life every day, every moment.
Thank you so much for sharing that with Charan, and you can certainly feel the difference and experience the difference in your body just by thinking about these different scenarios and circumstances. And it really does highlight the power of our thought, the power of our mind to influence our biochemistry. You can actually physically feel and experience that as you talk us through. So thank you for sharing that with us. It's really powerful. We've got another great question here from Jeff that says, if everyone is so very different, how can we ever know what we're supposed to do? It's a really great question, Jeff, and it is a very common question around, because we've got lots of these great concepts and ideas and understanding that we're all different, we all need to do different things. How do we know what to do? How do we know these sorts of things? Could you give us some insights there, Charan? Maybe where do we start?
That's a huge question, but what comes to mind is that if we can become aware of those sensations, we become aware of the frequency that we're here to be. So the way that I best describe it is that if you think of a rainbow, there's different colors there, but really it's just white light. And so the white light is consciousness, and then you've got the different colors that you can see. So we are all different colors. We're all here to be those different colors. When we can become aware of ourselves, the breath, using the different tools that we have, meditation, exercise, everything that we have, that allows us to become aware of our frequency, because that frequency is the one that's actually resonating with our color, if you like to call it that, of the rainbow. And then it doesn't become a question of what we do then, it's more a question of what we can be and how we can be.
Beautiful, Charan. I really like that, and I love that there's a lot of different teachings and different concepts around about energy and frequencies and things like that. But I really love how you share that each of us have our own resonant frequency. We're not maybe all trying to be getting to this this imaginary endpoint all the time. That we all have different. We're all here for different reasons, for different purposes. We all have different physiologies and different bodies and different brains and different minds for a reason. That we're all here playing a role in the bigger picture. And I really love how you share that, and I certainly believe that too, that everybody is very different, and everybody has a different reason why they're here on this earth, and to find out who you are and why you're here means that you can be really truly happy and healthy in yourself, and be here to do what you're here to do. So it's not always thinking that there's this endless goal that we're trying to strive to and we're all not good enough and needing to get where we need to get to. It's actually being more aware of who you are and why you're here, and really being owning that space and I guess, being in your element, so to speak. So thank you for sharing that perspective, Charan. It's beautiful. And these questions are absolutely fantastic, guys. Thank you so much for letting them come through. We've got a great question here from Janet, who says, what if you've already had your children after you've learned this? So for people who are listening right now, who've already had children that wish they could have turned back the clock and understood some of these concepts, how do you turn a teenager around who might not want to hear these kinds of things? A great question, Janet, and Charan, love to hear some insights in this.
Brilliant question. Well, because I've seen this time and time again, where the parent begins to shift their frequency and becomes their, we're talking about the rainbow, and comes into their own essence, into their own frequency, just by the parent doing just that, influences their children and everyone around them. So it's never about others, it's always about how we can come into our own frequency. And that's a very huge point, and great question.
Awesome, thanks, Charan. And there's a question here that says, Charan, I wonder, how do I identify what may have been passed down to me ancestrally, so I can get started on releasing it for myself and my children, my children's children? And that's a great question. We've talked about a lot of the concepts and a lot of the understandings behind this already. Is there any other techniques or tips or something that people can use to be aware of that from the things that have been passed down from ancestry?
I use muscle testing to do that. There's a great book, if people want to go get. It's called The Emotion Code. That teaches people exactly what to do and how to identify those energies. And a lot of my clients have had them and use them. For example, one of my clients, I was inspired to actually give her my copy of that book. And she went back and she gave it to her daughter, who was 18, and her daughter just read it from cover to cover. And her daughter had a pineapple phobia, and she decided to work on it herself and see what was underlying that. And this is not ancestral, but this is it kind of going back to show you that we can absorb things from our parents or grandparents when we're really young. And she found that she actually had an emotion trapped from her grandmother from the age of 1. She lived with her grandmother at that time, and her grandmother had a phobia of pineapples. And so when she released that, her mom actually went to the fridge. She had some pineapple and she brought it out and she gave it to her, and she ate it after 18 years. So wow. That's a great example.
Beautiful. Charan, we've got a couple more questions here. I just wanted to go back just briefly to the conversation or the question from Jeff, because we've had a few questions like this that have come through about how we can know what we're supposed to do. And I just wanted to highlight again from our major sponsor, PH360. If you guys are still in a position where you're unsure where to start, please go and check that out. Charan, I know you're familiar with PH360 as well. It's something that can give you a lot of tangible insights as to where to start and how you can understand the way that your body is at this point in time, and almost like your body talking to you about the sorts of foods that are best for you and the sorts of environments that are really good for you and healthy for you, the climates that are there. There's the people that will keep you happy and in great positive energy, and people that may help towards or lean you towards more negative experiences, can give you insights about your mind and about some of the perceptions and thoughts and beliefs and all these sorts of things. So it's a really great tangible place to start as well. So please go and check that out if you haven't already. onlinehealthsummit.com/PH360 is a really, really great place to start, and we really encourage everybody to check that out. Just on a side note, I've spent a majority of my life over the past decade, especially working with amazing people around the world to put something like this together, and it really is exciting. And this is what I spend my time on summits like these, and all the other work that I do is just sharing this information with everybody, because this information is available right now, and we don't have to guess anymore. It's something you can find out a lot of these tangible things that can really help you on your journey. So I just wanted to add that into the conversation from before too. So thanks for the great questions, guys. There's so many great comments coming through here. Charan, thank you, Charan. Thank you, Charan. Says Sienna, says Jeff, this is so fascinating. Thank you. Charan, you are such a beautiful presence. Thank you for all that you're sharing. There's so many great comments coming through here. So please go and check out charansurdhar.com/online health summit for more information from Charan. I might just we might just leave the rest of the questions that are there for now, because I'd love to talk to you, Charan. We're running out of time a little bit in the interview. I want to know a little bit about the future and about what you see as the possibilities for humanity moving forward. We're now starting to get these tangible understandings about consciousness, about our mindfulness, about our physiology and our genetics and our epigenetics. And we have a position in this space where we can actually change things. We now understand we have choices, and we're empowered to be in charge of our lives, where we can now be responsible and accountable for our own selves. Where do you see this? Where do you see humanity going over the next few years, the next few decades? Is there hope for us? And how are we going to achieve this navigation through this conscious time in our lives?
Wow. I see that if we can begin, it all starts with us here and now. Past, present, future, all come into this moment. And again, it comes down to that presence. If we can feel that energy within us, if we can breathe, just breathe. Breath is consciousness. Breath is everything. If we can feel that within our body, feel the sensations that are going on right here, right now, we are creating our future. And by that, I mean that it's impacting the way that everything shows up in the future. And because of that, if everyone begins to do that, that begins to change our biology, changes our physiology, changes everything. And that energy, as we've discussed, results in impacting the people around us. And it's that 100th monkey syndrome. If we all begin to do that, and these summits like this are great for that, because there's a whole collective consciousness coming together, discussing about all these things, and we're actually shifting the energy as we speak, right here, right now. And I believe that not to look at the fear of what's going on, because again, that changes our physiology, but to begin to look within and look, if we are peaceful in our body, the world is peaceful. It will show up that way because we are in that coherent state with everything around us.
Beautiful words, Charan. Thank you so much for sharing. And if you had one message to leave everybody with today, from people from all walks of life, all different ages that are listening into this conversation today, maybe we've got teenagers dialing in, maybe we've got people in their 80s and 90s that we've had listening into these conversations, and everyone in between, people who are super happy with their health right now and with their life, people who are maybe suffering from a lot of chronic pain and disease and illness, people who are stressed and working too hard and working too much, or people who are unemployed and enjoying surfing every day of their life. So many different people that may be here. If you had one message to leave everybody with today and could encapsulate the message of epigenetics and understanding how that influences our health and healing, what would you like to leave us with today?
We have hope. And hope meaning that if we can be in this space of presence and be present to everything that's going on in our body, that still lake of consciousness that's coming through us at every moment, be aware of that. We are in control of what's switching on and switching off our genes. There is no such thing as if your parents have something or somebody else had something that you're going to get it. Because if you can be in that space, you are creating your own biology.
Wow, thank you so much, Charan, for being here and for sharing these amazing words with us. I really just appreciate so much the time, so much the work that you're doing in the world, and the message that you're sharing in a very, very simple, very tangible way for people to understand about all these things that we can now harness and take control of and empower change in our own lives. So a huge, huge thank you for being here today. Very, very grateful for everything that you're up to. A huge thank you to you, for the listeners, for being here, for investing your time into your health. I really, really hope, and our wish is that you are taking this information and absolutely running with it to be able to apply into your lives. The visualizations, the exercises, the content, the information that's here is all here for you. So please make sure that you take the time to implement and to start to apply some of this into your lives. Please share this with your family and friends and your communities and those that need it most, because this is just information and awareness. It's helping with the consciousness and shifting and raising the consciousness of all the people who are listening in and all of those around us who we can influence as well. because this journey is about us in being able to improve our own health and happiness so that we can help others on their own journey of personal health and happiness too. So thank you all for being here. Please go ahead and like the Facebook page if you haven't already, so that you can get all the updates from all the speakers, all the bonuses, all the schedules and gifts and all those sorts of things. And please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, because that's where you get free access to all the video replays from all our amazing speakers, over 30 speakers from all over the world, talking 100% personalized health just for you. So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Charan, thank you again for being here and for sharing all your wisdom and expertise with us. And look forward to talking to you all again very soon.